Slim Spurling. I'm the discoverer and inventor of a couple of processes which we're going to discuss today, and give you a little bit of background on myself. I was born in South Dakota in Aberdeen, and my first home there was in Bison. My folks were involved in agriculture. Dad was a county agent, and our house was just a little tar paper shack out there on the dry flats in Bison, South Dakota. We moved around a lot during the early years, went from Bison to Elgin, Illinois. Dad had a job with Milwaukee Railroad as an agricultural agent, and then World War II came along. We went from Army camp to Army camp, and spent a couple of years, the duration of the war, in central South Dakota with my grandparents on the Missouri River. And I grew up a couple of years there with my granddad, who was one of the best hunters in the area, and learned to hunt and fish. My entire young life, after we moved to Colorado, was devoted to hunting and fishing and being outdoors, learning to know all of the plants and where the animals were. So after my brief career in the Navy, a couple of years on reserve duty, entered forestry school. Thought that would be a natural way to express my interest in the outdoors. So my studies were in biology, botany, biochemistry, all of the natural sciences. And while I was there, I was invited, while I was still a sophomore, to take some postgraduate seminar courses in DNA chemistry, which was the new thing in the early 60s. So as time went on, I became more and more disenchanted with the academic and scientific communities. And at the end of my college term at 1966, I turned down an offer that came to me to have a master's degree program. The offer was to find a chemical substance in the fungus world that could be grown like penicillin and produced very cheaply so that it could be put in as an unregistered and unlabeled ingredient in many different foodstuffs. The purpose of this compound specifically, according to the details outlined in the protocols of the master's degree program, was to control the population. This was a substance which would lower the threshold of suggestibility and would perhaps have a side effect of producing a mild euphoria. Now, these effects are probably not too alarming until one considers the social and economic and perhaps political considerations for the control of the population. And the control of the population was exactly the design parameter of this master's degree program. Well, to make a long story short, it took me 3 days to locate in the literature that substance, the fungus that produced it, to grow a culture, to ingest a small amount and test it, find out that indeed exactly that effect desired was already known and in the literature, but unknown to the designers of this master's program. Needless to say, I had some ethical and moral considerations there, and I declined to accept the program. In all honesty, I was extremely disgusted, angry to the point of near explosion, and so I walked out of Colorado State University a very disillusioned and angry young man. Spent the next 20 years teaching myself the art of blacksmithing, acquired a small shop for a few $100s, and began to learn the ancient arts of metalworking. As it turned out, it was a wonderful exercise in alchemy. The ability to deal with four elements in their various forms and qualities: earth, air, fire, and water. So, unbeknownst to me at that time, or not even in my consideration, I began to work with these elements and to create useful and artistic pieces of metal. After 10 years of working solo in my shop and having built it up to a fairly professional level, I opened a school and began to teach the art. And during that time of about 5 years that the school was open, I had about five helpers toward the end, and we had a very large school. It was the largest blacksmith shop in the United States at that time, in the early and mid-70s. I closed that down in 1980 and took a job on a ranch, and then when that proved unsatisfactory, I moved down to Denver, and was very much a fish out of water. Having been raised in the country and lived my life there, I found the city life to be a bit disconcerting. After about a year, I began to relax into it. Became a little bit more easy with the city life and the hustle and bustle, and began to work out a new way of living. Let's take a break here. During my years in Denver, I lived there about 7 years. I started a little handyman business, and pretty soon had more work than I could do alone. So I called my old friend Bill Reid and asked him if he needed work or could he help. So he came over one morning. We began working together, and as we began to get better acquainted, I found out that Bill had a tremendous interest in science and some of the more far out, or what we might call fringe science. Some of the esoteric things like Tesla and Wilhelm Reich, and scientists who were not mainstream but had just made discoveries which became famous for it. So we began to experiment evenings doing alchemical work, and Bill had a lifetime interest in alchemy, and he was a mining engineer and metallurgist, having had his own precious metal refinery at one time. So since I'd been out of the science world and academic world for many, many years, I had to kind of play catch up. And when I began listening to Bill, and he was talking about feel this and feel that, and the didn't have a clue. But as we continued to experiment, down in the basement with scrap materials and various kinds of junk that we could pick up in the dumpsters or out in the back alleys, we developed a thing called a caduceus coil based on some reading that we'd done. And that led us into a study of the subtle energies. At that time, I was married to a lady named Diane, who was probably one of the most gifted clairvoyants I've ever known. And she was able to see the energies, see them in color, and detect extremely subtle changes in the energy fields or the beams that were projected from these caduceus coils. So we could begin to correlate different types of coil, different tunings, and with her gift of being able to see the colors, we knew that a certain color would give a certain effect. So we researched in that area for about 5 years, from 1985 till 1990. And during this time, we also began doing the work with the geopathic zones. Initially, we didn't have a good language or definition. But as time went on, we learned about the Hartmann grid, geopathic zones being a distinct variety of these negative energies, different than the Hartmann grid, different than the Curry grid. But in our researches, the first time out that we did an experiment, we were very fortunate in having a lady who was afflicted with a severe migraine headache. She'd spent thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, going to specialists trying to get rid of this headache. So after a time, we took quite an interest in her case, and by doing various manipulations of the energy field in her home, were able to slightly relieve it for a short time. Then one day we came by the house and decided to dowse for negative energy. And we'd heard about it, but never experienced it or done any dowsing for that particular item. Well, about every 10 feet, going along the side of her house, we'd find this place where the rods would open and there'd be a distinct feeling there. It didn't feel good. So we used a simple technique to remove this negative energy from her home. And since she wasn't home that day, we were not able to talk to her. We went back 3 days later and spoke with her. And she reported that she had a complete absence of a headache on that particular day. And asked her when that had started. And she said, oh, well, 3 days ago. So I said, well, that's the day we came and removed the geopathic stress from your home. Oh my goodness, she said, I came home that afternoon and my kitchen was crystal clear. Well, what do you mean crystal clear? Well, it had always been fuzzy and gray looking, and now it's just as bright and clear as crystal. So, as time has gone on, we've found that we can actually see a difference in an area where the geopathic stress has been removed. And apparently this geopathic stress is a highly chaotic type of energy. Anytime you have stress, you're looking at something that's perhaps in a shear force, or there's an out of resonance vibration there. So we've developed this work that we do with geopathic stress from that first event. Went on to do about 100 homes just to certified ourselves that this simple technique would work for many different people and in different locations. So we finally, after 100 cases or homes that we'd worked, and seeing the relief that people got, we began to make it into a business. We charge a small fee for this. This has continued now for, 17 years? Since 1985, no, 12 years. And we've been successful in every case that we've worked. A few exceptions, but I'd say we have about a 98% success rate in removing geopathic stress and relieving the symptoms of whatever kind a person may be experiencing. And the reports back from the individuals who find beneficial change in their lives usually revolve around the ability to sleep better and be more relaxed, and they find that they're more focused, and their health seems to improve. Well, about 1991, I got into a state of bad health myself, nearly died, and by using the newly discovered energy form that's contained in the ring that we invented, the condition passed very rapidly. Basically, it saved my life. And from that point on, we've researched many different areas. We've developed a tremendous broad range of understanding, almost unlimited range of application of these tools. Now, the ring was discovered as a pure accident. It's not a conscious thing, but we had been looking for a way to increase the diameter of the beam of energy from our little caduceus coils. A break here. Thank you. Discovery of the ring led rather naturally then to the development of the AccuVac coil, as we've come to call it. The first coil was developed just out of pure boredom because I got tired of making rings. And the how would I put that? The coil was developed based on the same principles as the ring, but using a slightly different geometry. All of the tools, incidentally, are based on certain measurements found in sacred geometry. The Egyptian cubit, or 20.6 inches, is our baseline measurement, and that's related to light speed and several other known principles in physics. That number, 20.6 or 206, shows up in many different formulas and standard mathematical derivatives in physics and mathematics. One of the physical constants of the planet or the local universe. Anyway, the coil, when we took it to a clairvoyant who could see this energy, seemed to have a flow of energy through it. It was drawing in negative energy and putting out positive energy. So with that in mind, my wife Jean came home one evening. I had a very sore neck, something giving her a lot of pain right in this area. I said, here, try the coil, see if that helps. It's supposed to have a flow of energy through it from negative to positive. So she tried the positive side first and found it made her head a little bit stuffy. and then turned the drawing or negative end toward the sore spot, begin to pull this energy out of the body. Well, after 45 minutes of that activity, she developed a condition where she had absolutely no pain in the body. And clairvoyantly, one could see the dark energy coming from the area of pain. So this is a development that was unprecedented. We had no idea that this could happen with an instrument that had no electrical power, no obvious source of power. But nonetheless, the effect was there. So the following day, she worked on me, took out some pain in my ribs, and I experienced a tremendous relief from discomforts. The following day, worked on partner Bill Reid, and then began working with different clients to see if our discovery was going to be valuable. And indeed, it turned out that it was. Everyone that we worked with had a significant relief of whatever symptoms seemed to be bothering them at the time. Pain relief seems to be the biggest item. So we were a little unsure what this was, or uncertain how to proceed, except to just keep on doing what we were doing. The design of the coil has changed several times since we initially started, and we've added some refinements which seem to increase its effectiveness. Following the coil, then we developed the feedback loop, which operates exactly on the same principles, but it seems to be a bit more energetic and have a more active effect. Then in furthering the research, we've gone into development of the harmonizer, which produces now a spherical field, a tube torus, if you will, which affects quite a large area. And this unit will keep the energy in a home stable, office, business, in a barn. Gardens seem to benefit many, many different applications, just like the ring has many, many different applications. So this should suffice as a brief introduction of who we are and what we're doing, what our path of discovery has been, and this will then serve as an introduction to the facilitator who is conducting the workshop here today. Would you give us some reports on the effects that you've seen from removing the geopathic stress from different homes?
Yeah, we've had wonderful success with that. In fact, I have a neighbor who had been very, very ill. I thought that perhaps it was about her time to leave the planet because she was so bad she couldn't sleep. And after the geopathic was done, she was up, bright-eyed, running around and sleeping beautifully. Her husband, who they were both over much older, and her husband has been out taking care of his lawn, doing all sorts of work in his garage. I can't believe it. And he's bright-eyed also. And I saw her the other day drive off in the car, which she hasn't driven in months and months.
For goodness sakes.
In fact, she didn't even care to drive, and off she went.
After the geopathic zones were neutralized, how long did it take for this effect to become apparent?
Immediately. In that case, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, immediately.
Within 24 hours,
Yes.
48 hours?
24 hours.
Oh my goodness.
She had called me the next day and told me, and I had spoken with her the day before this had happened. And then that following day it was done, and the next day she called me.
Oh,
She couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, at some point we'd like to get her on tape and have her story live in color.
That would be wonderful. And in my own case, I noticed I've always been an insomniac, and I noticed that I'm sleeping so much better,
Good.
not as restless. I noticed that one thing, I don't know whether it was the geopathic or, or the harmonizer, but I noticed my dust in the house isn't as bad.
Not as much
No,
dust.
not as much dust in the house.
Oh, for goodness sake. That's one I never heard
Yes.
of.
I don't have to dust as often. So
All right.
I have another, it was very interesting. It was a triplex. And of course, to do the geopathic, we had to go into the whole area there.
Mm-hmm.
And one lady walked out and said, "What are you girls doing?" And so the lady who lived in the one in the corner told her what was happening. And she said, "Oh, gee, that's wonderful. That's exciting." And so the next day, the lady came over to see her and said, "You know, it's amazing. I've been here about 3 months and I have been miserable. I don't know what it was, but she said, I haven't slept well. Everything has been wrong. And all of a sudden, things have changed." She said, "Last night I had the most beautiful sleep I've ever had."
Wonderful.
Isn't that amazing? So I'm sure there are other reports too that we haven't found. But I find that the geopathic, I feel that my house is happier.
The house is happier. That's a good description. Have your contacts with other people expanded? Has there been more activity in the communication and social area?
Oh yeah, yeah. We had a very interesting thing here. Um, there was one person. I have meetings on Wednesday nights. There was one person that was very negative, and I noticed that the Hartman line went right through where she always sat, and there was an immediate change there. In fact, she wouldn't even sit there after not knowing what we had done.
Right.
And she was sat somewhere else, but she has changed completely. So I know it affected her. And now she's telling me that she would like her house done.
Oh, wonderful.
I just said, yeah. And she's been negative, about all of this.
Right. So what have been your experiences with the different tools, the ring, the coil, feedback, and harmonizer?
Well, in the ring, I've been using the small ring. I put it over the nozzle of my gas, when I put the gas in. I've noticed an increase of, I would say, on the road, on the highway, about 8 miles per gallon increase. Yes, we had a good chance of that. And I think that it's, I haven't completed the in-town right now at this moment. I've been very busy, but it was quite low on the regular.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's probably about 5 miles, at least 5 miles.
Oh, you're getting
but I'm sure it's
more mileage,
more
even
mileage,
on the cheaper
one.
gas.
And on my hose, when watering my plants and things like that, I've been putting it over my hose. I'd like to put it over my whole system if I could, but unfortunately it's underground.
Right.
I can't very well do that. But I'll figure out a way.
Okay.
Because I think that it does restructure the water and helps with my plants.
They seem to be a little healthier this year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. And I haven't fed them as much.
Okay.
The Acrovac is marvelous for taking out negative energies. One night we were working with it, and my living room is 27 feet long. And very interestingly, I had my back to the person, and they were pulling energy. I had back problems, and that was one of the things that we were working on. And the person kept moving back, and of course I couldn't see where she was. I said, "Where do you feel it now?" Because she was putting it to different areas. She was clear back in my kitchen, and I could tell her exactly where it was. It seemed to be much stronger the further away that you got.
Yes, we noticed that effect with the first coil, the first session.
Yeah.
And people have reported that fairly frequently. So did you get rid of some discomfort there?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. And we had, a lot of times we work on our friends. There was someone here yesterday that had very badly injured foot, and she was worked on, and she couldn't believe it. And she too had been rather negative about this. She thought that something else that she was using would help her, and it didn't. And so I had her come over, and she just bounced right out of here.
Well,
She's been practically crippled.
oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Well, we'll hope that effect lasts for her and persists over time, and that she has a complete healing on that.
Yeah. And I use the rings also around on my water to polinize the water. I use it on my plants, and I use it under my chair where I sit. In fact, I use 2 to 3 rings, and the large rings. I do meditate, and my meditations have been so powerful. I wear my personal harmonizer all the time, and of course I was told that we have a protection approximately 3 feet around us. I was up at Mount Shasta, and we were at a college because there were about 1,500 people for this celebration they were having. And there was the football, or not the football, but the baseball game practice was going on, which was near the parking lot, but not really close. As I was leaning over to open up my trunk to get some things out of the trunk, and my friend was standing very close by, a ball came, and it came right between us, and it hit my trunk and dented my steel trunk.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And it was, of course, I thought I heard someone say, "Watch out," but you don't think about anything. That somebody's going to hit you in the head with a ball. But they were frightened. They were very frightened.
Oh.
That thought that maybe it had hit us. And I didn't realize what had happened to my trunk until later, which I haven't had fixed yet. But I do feel that we both were protected. We both had on our harmonizers,
And you feel that energy diverted that ball from coming
Absolutely.
and hitting either one.
Yes. And every time I go out in public, I wear this. I wear it around the house too at times, but I definitely do when I go out in public.
Wonderful.
I feel very secure in this. And my harmonizer that I have in the house, it gives out so much energy. And I've noticed that the pollution seems to be has left.
no
dissolved.
No air pollution.
No
to
air
speak
pollution
of
around
in this
here.
area.
And I think that I really feel it has a lot to do with it.
Skies are a little brighter.
Much brighter. Right now, it's very bright.
Have you noticed more birds coming into the yard?
Oh, yes, I have loads of birds. Loads of birds.
Is that a change from March when we neutralized the geopathic zones? And you got...
Well, I've always had birds, but I seem to have more right now.
You have more?
Yeah. I've always been birds, particularly since I got rid of, not got rid of my cats, but my cats left, left the planet, But they were around some of them, but now there are a lot of birds, and it's delightful. And the weather has been wonderful.
Good.
It's been lovely here. I think now the loop, we've worked with that. We had a friend that's up in Los Angeles that had been very ill and was in a lot of pain. We went up there and we did her house, which was amazing because she lives in a condo.
You took out the geopathic stress.
Oh, we certainly did, and we could feel the difference immediately. And we worked, the Hartman lines went right through her bed, and she was having a lot of lung problems.
Wow.
And a lot of pain. And we were working with her, gave her a treatment, and used those, and she slept that night the first time in her bed. She's been getting up and sleeping in a chair, and partially. And today, let's see, it's about a month later. I can't believe the change in her.
She just kind of come back to life.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. And she was given a wonderful treatment, and my friend who was very good at doing the treatments, gave it to her. We both participated, but she was the one that did predominantly the most of the treatments. we've had marvelous results. I didn't do this, but some of my friends that were in this workshop did a 6-story building.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting.
Relief was had there too.
I imagine so. It's a little difficult to find out too much there because it's not a convalescent home, but it is low housing for the elderly, and there are a lot of people that are not well in there.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
we're trying to find out. But a couple of people I know that live there look pretty good.
Good. There's been a change.
Yes, I'm sure there has.
That's great.
Let's see. There seems to be there's so many people that we have been doing. We went up north into Oregon and we did 4 houses up there. We had wonderful results, and everyone was excited about it.
Very positive results.
Very positive results. And I know they had some illnesses before, and we found a lot of the heartburn going to go through. This was a very difficult place to do because there's so much rock.
Oh, I've heard that about already.
Yeah. We were excited about doing that, and so were they.
Well, thank you, Dorothy, and we'll wait to hear more from down the line here, down somewhere in the future. We'll have more reports and be able to get some specific details on what's happening in people's lives. Thank you very much. Did the geopathic work, and just some of the stories that I like to tell that might not come up in the talk on Sunday on the tools, their discovery, and that type of thing. So I'll just introduce some of the applications and some of the results that we've had that would have pertinence to different individuals here in the group tonight. I'll do some scribbling on the board, and a lot of hand waving and arm waving, and I probably will cover the particulars that would not ordinarily come up during a workshop. This is just by way of an introduction. Give you some of the highlights of things we've experienced in both areas of the subtle energy work. And I want to, while I'm talking, have each of you experience the effects of this gold silk that Bill Reid has produced and his wife is now turning into certain articles of clothing. Over the next couple of days, we'll just keep circulating that for those that are interested and would want to experience it on a very personal level. So the other thing I want to do is to introduce Cynthia's glass work. I've seen a piece and I was just absolutely charmed beyond belief. The piece was very powerful, and being a craftsman myself, not as a fine craftsman as Cynthia, but coming from an artistic background of about 20 years of hammering iron, I can appreciate the very fine and delicate work that's done here, particularly the accuracy. I was a very crude blacksmith. The hinges and the doorknobs, that's my style of artwork. And that's the kind of thing I did for a number of years. So with that, I'd like to have Cynthia make a brief presentation here, show the piece that she brought, and I don't know if you want to pass.
Crystal pattern. on this piece of glass, all sides are high polished, so the energy is going front and back, and also shooting out from all sides. And this glass is called Starfire. So appropriate.
I mentioned about the other one, the other tough glass you did.
And the other glass that I use is it has a greener tint. It's just as nice. I don't know what else to say.
That you usually,
This texture here, what you're seeing is just what we call hand lapping with the silicon carbide grit. It's the same stuff that you use for sandblasting. This panel was supposed to go to Boston as a presentation for a Mormon temple. And we're pending an estimate bid to put 6 huge Flower of Life panels in a Mormon temple.
Wow.
We don't know if it'll go through.
That'll change.
But on the other panels that I do, since this was for a sample, I didn't hand texture. But what you see is, you saw that on Anne's, is that every inch is worked where it's totally spinning, constantly spinning, every inch. It just has life once I texture it. But what you're seeing is just straight to show the cuts. But it is wheel cut traditionally with a lathe. And it takes me about 3 to 5 days per panel. Working 3 hours nonstop, putting it down and processing through the night and going back. When it's finally completed, it usually takes me about 2 to 3 days to adjust because the energy that's running into the panel. Dining room table is at an angle where the panel itself is aimed where we sleep. And I have 2 Siamese cats, and I put the large rings on the floor, and they just roll. And they're very high energized cats because of the energy that we run at home. And that's just from just being there. So, yeah, I was being prepared for this. And before I started this panel or received seeing the panel, I didn't cut any glass for 6 months. I couldn't touch glass. I couldn't go to the studio. The labor intensive, I couldn't do any of that. And after 6 months in January, I reached for a big thick piece of glass and started drawing and cutting on it. And usually after all that time of not working labor intensively, I hurt. Well, during the panel, not one bit. Not one bit. So, but I use the panels, regular alignments too, enhancing with his various electrons.
I'll vouch for that.
Yeah, because Robin's received.
I'm her guinea pig.
Lucky.
Lucky you.
There you have it to view. An experience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you'd like, it can be here every day while the workshop's taking place.
All right.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Sure.
That's nice.
So how do you find it? How do you find it? Excuse me, how do you find it? What
Well,
am
I should
calling
probably start with the 2 events that got me on the path of healing myself, on the path of discovery, as it were, and were things that I had no precedent for. There was no precedent in my experience, and the results were phenomenal, to say the least. They were beyond anything I might have expected, and give a lot of credence to some of the metaphysical things I've heard about or was beginning to hear about, and also take us back into history, perhaps even thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And I'll try to introduce that more historical concept after I've laid out the first scenario where I used dowsing and the quote acupuncture technique that I'm currently using for diverting the grid energies away from the home or business. I'll try to give you a little bit of an idea. Some of you have been to Denver, and on the west side of Denver is, of course, the mountains. And as you approach that area, you're always impressed with these hogback mountains. They're just a narrow-lipped edge like this that come up and run a mile or two in length, and then a creek will come winding down through them. So my old-time home there since '46 was right on Bear Creek, just east of the mountains. We had a several acre property here, like 60 acres. And I lived right on Bear Creek. Make that blue look like a river. And along the bottom of the hogbacks ran a county road, starting in here and kind of running fairly straight along there. There were a couple of natural lakes called the soda lakes, which had rather interesting history. The early pioneers used to boil the water, boil it down pretty dry, and recover soda ash for washing clothes. It helped them clean up their traveling gear. And it was an old Indian campground on both sides of the creek. High stream banks that are cut through by the streams. And I lived there for about 35 years total. I called it home. In the year that I was to leave that area, in 1980, we suddenly began noticing a number of accidents that would occur right about this location on the road. Every car hit exactly the same spot. If you'd driven a stake in there, everyone would hit a stake. I'm curious about that. And how come all of a sudden we have all these accidents? So I've been reading a little book by Harvey Howells called Dowsing for Everyone. And it's written up in the bibliography that I have in the workbook that you'll have tomorrow. Anyway, in there they described geopathic zones, or zones of noxious energy was the term used. So along in the book, one of the stories was about the dowsers using different means to block these energy zones and bring about improvements in health or sleeping patterns. And one of the stories involved blocking a zone outside of a an intersection where there'd been a high number of accidents. So I thought, well, I wonder if these accidents are caused by geopathic stress. So I went down along the road here and down for about a half a mile. And right at this location, I found a stream crossing that went into the small lake here. And I knew there was a little spring up on the hillside, kind of a marshy area. And suspected that there might be a crack or a fissure deep in the earth, and the stream pretty much followed that water course. So at that point, I took a couple of rods, once I located it, and since I was standing right on the spot where the rods had opened, just like so, I thought, well, maybe these will work. Let's see if I can block that energy from crossing the road, if that's what's causing the problem. So I knelt down and I just stuck them into the ground and shoved the handles down, just a couple of feet off the road in the bark here, in the grass there. So we've gone from a historical accident rate of maybe 1 or 2 a year at this location, steadily climbing from maybe at that time we were having maybe 1 every 2 or 3 months. If we graph this and show the historical trend, we'd see a curve of 1 or 2 a year, finally up to maybe 1 or 2 a month in later times as traffic increased and they paved the road and so on and so on. And in '79, this curve suddenly went like this, up to 20 a day. I mean, it was carnage. Well, that coincided with the grand alignment of the planets in May of '80. So, to make a long story short, this accident rate from the time I blocked this, as far as I know to the present time, went straight down to 0 on the line. We had a spike and then a 0, and it didn't return to its historic normal as long as I was in that area. As I drive past that area modernly, 15 years later, I don't see any evidence of accidents in that particular area. Of course, it's a 4-lane highway. But, this to me was unbelievable. I mean, I had no precedent, total left brain at the time. I'm saying, okay, we have a series of accidents that happen every day. The helicopters and the sirens are overhead. This is not possible. So as I left my old home ground, a lot of my paradigm shifted. I left the country, moved into the city, and I'm a fish out of water. I didn't know what to do with myself. No job history, no marketable skill in the Denver job market. And about that time, I began getting into the metaphysical side of things. I'd married a clairvoyant lady, and she had a library full of metaphysical books that she'd never read. She didn't need them. She just saw it. So she tutored me for 7 years and brought me a little more up to speed on what metaphysics is and how it works. And then we had to part company so that I'd have a quiet alone time to get in and explain all the terms and begin to study and practice and, see if all this stuff really worked. So between 1981, when we married, and 89 and 90, I was in that mode of learning a new language, a new way of understanding things, and beginning to see the reality of, as our American Indian people say, the real world behind this. Finding out what prayer is, how it works, and that everything I said or thought or did was a form of prayer. And made some major changes in my life. Well, about that same time, Bill Reid and I began working together, and he was an old metaphysicist from many, many years back. And also a physical scientist, and a very left-brain approach to physics and chemistry and that type of thing, but still interested in alchemy. But trying to bring it about through totally physical means. And we began to research the intricacies of alchemy and, as I mentioned, Wilhelm Reich data, of which I had read some back in the early 60s and had built a couple of cloudbusters myself and used them, found them effective, and then found that you didn't need a cloudbuster to do the same job. You could do it by throwing energy out through a hand or just visioning the energy going out. And between 81 and 89, I did a lot of practice in that area, much to the astonishment of some of the local weathermen, as well as myself. I was riding a tractor one morning up in northern Colorado, and I was doing some ranch work, and the wind began to blow out of the Laramie area. I noticed kind of a gray, fuzzy, not a cloud bank, but coming with that wind from Laramie was this blackish stuff floating in the air. And I didn't need the wind to come up and blow my corn stalks off to the next county, so I began throwing energy at it. I did that every time I head north on the tractor. And I did that probably 8 or 10 rounds of the field, and then forgot about it. Well, at the time I noticed the wind start, I was also listening to the KOA weather reports, the farm reports. And the announcer was saying, well, boys, you got to get your baby calves in and make sure you got plenty of hay in the barn and everything in out of the pasture. We're going to have a winter storm that is going to be as bad as anything we've ever seen. Huge storm coming out of Laramie. Okay, well, that must be the wind I'm seeing, and this gray stuff. I wonder if the gray stuff was associated with it. I didn't know what it was at the time. So the morning passed, and the noon farm report came on, and the same announcer comes on the radio, and he says, boys, you're not going to believe this. That storm vanished. It's gone. And they couldn't explain it. I'm sitting there on the tractor scratching my head and saying, wow, this stuff really works. Whatever it is. But I knew the feelings, I knew the flow of the energy and the ability to do that. And so I spent a year and a half playing with cloud patterns, weather, and tornadoes, and nasty looking thunderstorms, and that kind of thing. But I couldn't teach anybody to do it. They looked at me like I was totally out of my tree. And as a matter of fact, the boss told me not to even talk about it. The neighbors were beginning to talk. I could care less. Hell, if you yell rain, you need to raise hay. What else do you have to be concerned about? So at that time, Bill and I began to be better acquainted, and we went to a psychotronics conference down in Golden. I don't know, the 23rd annual or something. And I felt totally like a fish out of water, you know, seeing guys like Tom Bearden and, well, I can't remember all the names now, but, you know, grand old folks, psychotronics and subtle energy work and esoteric things that I couldn't even pronounce. But I made a vow that day as I walked in that I would understand it at some point. That I'd come along and I'd study and try to figure this stuff out. And in the middle of that, along late in the program, Ralph Bloom walked in with his rune book, just freshly published. And some of you may have seen the runes and worked with them a little bit. But he set up his little card table and a folding chair and set out a couple of dozen books. I finally got curious enough and got enough gumption up to walk out and start talking to him. And I said, here, try it. You've got a purple sack of stuff, and reach in and pull out the rune. So what I drew was this one. And I guess it's been ever since we've been on that path of the spiritual warrior. Drawing that rune to begin with kind of backed me up a little bit and really set me back on my heels. Because I didn't know the full implications of that at the time. But after, that was 82, 92, 15 years later, we're out here on the cutting edge of technology. I've been given a lot of gifts, a lot of opportunity, and the greatest opportunity to this point is the opportunity to speak to this group this evening. A lot of high-powered folks here. I recognize that, and I really appreciate it. I'm just very, very impressed with who I've met here this evening and the strengths of this group and the backgrounds that you all have. So thank you for coming and listening to an old hillbilly talk about some things that have happened in his life experience. Well, as Bill and I began to work together, we came to we were called to a lady's home to do some house repairs. And I'd worked for her previously and found her to be quite a delightful person. young blonde woman, early 30s, and obviously fairly well to do, living in a nice district and a very nice home. And when I'd been there before, she just treated me wonderfully well. You know, had stopped for coffee and fixed some fruit and cake. Not the usual thing when you're, you know, raking leaves and hauling trash and trimming trees. So we got to the door on this second call, and she met us, and her face was kind of pinched in, and she didn't look like the same person I remembered. Didn't have the same aura about her, same attitude. And she was a bit crabby, and Bill says, "Hey, I don't want to work for you. Let's get out of here." I said, "Hey, wait a minute. That's not the same person that I know. Let's find out more about this." As time went on, we found that she had gotten a migraine headache the day she moved in the house. And she had a migraine headache for 3 years continuously. She'd been over half the planet, spent over $40,000 trying to get rid of this headache, find a specialist who could help her. And nobody had. So we thought, well, let's try, let's ground her gutters, make sure the electricity is flowing the right direction in the house, and do a couple other things. We found that her furnace was out of adjustment, producing a little carbon monoxide. And we made a slight change for her over a period of a couple of weeks. We were going by one day, and I said, "Bill, let's check and see if this geopathic stress is all that it's cracked up to be. Let's see if that's her problem." But I was remembering the high accident corner down there on County Road. So just on the spur of the moment, we wheeled into her drive and knocked on the door. She wasn't home. Got out the dowsing rods and went and checked around the house. Sure enough, about every 10 feet, there's a geopathic or negative energy line. So we used a little different technique than we currently use, but it worked. And being she wasn't home, I called her 3 days later and asked her how she was feeling. And she said, "Well, I don't have a headache today." Well, when did that start? Well, 3 days ago. I said, "Well, Bill and I came by, and we stopped and moved the geopathic zones that we found there. And that happened about 3 o'clock in the afternoon." She said, "Well, I got home at 4, and my house was crystal clear." This dark, heavy energy had completely vanished. And she was actually able to see the difference. And she said, "I woke up the next morning totally without pain for the first time in 3 years." So that was where we started. And the first incidents and the lead into the conversations that we'll have tomorrow and the demonstration on the hands-on experience of dowsing for geopathic stress. Removing geopathic stress from a home or a business, we found the usual thing that happens is that people have more energy. Initially, they may feel so tired that they just go crash for 24 or 48 hours. As the stress is relieved, they just kind of let their breath out and report that they really need to go to sleep and just relax. And the reason for that is that geopathic stress affects the level of adrenaline in the kidneys. And you have a constant irritation, constant pressure, constant adrenaline rush that you're not even quite aware of. And one of the symptoms of geopathic stress after a very long term is adrenal exhaustion. So if any of your practitioners and your clients are exhibiting signs of adrenal exhaustion, be sure you have somebody, practitioner who can go out in the field and do the geopathic work for them, and recommend that. Another symptom you'll find is the roller coaster effect. They come in right here at the bottom of the pit, and your practice brings them up to a high, and then when they leave and go back home, they're down the pit again in about a week. Okay, knock out the geopathic stress, and they'll come up here and they'll plateau. Along at a newer, higher level. Headaches, tumors, cancers, by the way, are a disease of location. Cancer always occurs in the location where two of these zones cross in the bed. If it's in the upper body, it'll be in the throat, in the other tissue, in the lungs. You'll see cancers on the legs and the feet, anywhere in the world. But they'll always be right on those crossings. The Hartman brothers, a couple of doctors out of Germany, did a study on this back in the 40s, I think, and they documented 5,000 cases. 98% correlation with the crossing of geopathic stress with the occurrence of cancer. We've all heard of cancer houses where generation after generation after generation of the family or succeeding owners will have cancer. It's due to the particular energy in that house and the oddity that everybody parks their bed in exactly the same place in the room. And the guy sleeping on that side of the bed gets cancer and the one on that side doesn't. And that's the simple reason. And the reason is it's a 1-inch wide band of energy that crosses the bed. And where two of those intersect and cross, that's where you'll have cancer. It brings on all of the other degenerative diseases. And we've seen everything from MS to cancer to chronic fatigue syndrome to da-da-da-da-da, all resolved, all go away after doing geopathic stress work, knocking out, neutralizing these zones. So I can comfortably say that geopathic stress is at the root of every known ailment, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. Geopathic stress is a major contributor to those various conditions. You have a question, Larry?
Well, what I was thinking is, sounds like you're talking about me. What I was just thinking is that I have kidney problems and it's related to varicose veins. And it sounds like I must have a Hartman lines crossing someplace in my area. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. The geopathic zones lower the resistance, interfere with the immune system so that we pick up chronic conditions, virus, bacteria, fungus, other parasites. I lump parasites into those specific classes, the whole range of organisms that commonly inhabit our bodies and finally get to the majority. In other words, they finally take over and down we go. So I'm going to bring in here a thought that I had this morning. I was talking, or yesterday, I guess, I was talking to Dorothy. In scriptures, you remember somewhere in there, and somebody may know exactly where it is. old Lucifer's talking, and he says, I will cast a net upon the whole earth. I will trap and ensnare this whole earth. It could be that the Heartland grid and geopathic zones are that net, because they are defined as chaos zones. They introduce chaos into otherwise orderly and organized systems. Our bodies are basically very organized and orderly systems, created obviously by the one being. So if indeed that be true, we found a way at least to lift a portion of that net so it doesn't bother us. And it's real simple, as you'll discover tomorrow.
These rods can only be put outside or inside.
Preferably outside, but they can be put inside. And we'll use both the dowsing rods, like acupuncture needles, or we can use this device we call an omega coil. Greek symbol omega means resistance. And it does resist the flow of these energies. Blocks it.
Which way do you
Yeah, if we have a geopathic zone entering in this direction, you place the open legs like so. Some of the interesting things we've observed after the geopathics are neutralized is the bird life seems to increase in the area. Even in a small yard, it seems like all of a sudden the backyard's full of birds. They love to come in and be in that space. Other creatures as well. Sometimes, squirrels, raccoons, and other things will come into the area. Ants, on the other hand, tend to disappear after you neutralize the geopathics. We've seen quite a number of cases, and this was, I think, probably the best recommendation I had on that, and one of the nicest reports came from the wife of the president of the Exxon Corporation in Dallas. We had the opportunity to do that home for them, and the purpose of it was to relieve some stresses that he was undergoing, and that resolved. But when her exterminator came to check the house in the spring, why he couldn't find any cockroaches or ants, and he said, "Gee, I'm sorry, but I can't charge you for my services." Of interest to you, Lola, would be the fact that partner Bill Reid went to a jazz concert one night, and he quick doused the concert hall, and after they started just a practice early in the afternoon, and he got acquainted with the piano player, and the guy said, "I can't make this thing work right. This piano isn't right for some reason." And he was also a piano tuner, so he got in there and he tuned on it a while. Couldn't make the thing sound just the way he wanted it. So Bill said, "Wait a minute, let's check something." And he got his dowsing rods and checked, and there was a geopathic zone going right across the piano. So he took an omega coil and taped it to the wall there so that it didn't go, and then he checked a few more, especially where the group would have been working. And the musicians normally could, say they play for an hour at a sitting. They played for 3.5 hours without a break. It felt wonderful. And they said it was the best performance they had ever given as a group. And incidentally, the piano sounded the best that it could possibly sound. So these geopathic zones introduce a dissonance, if you will, into the environment, and they can actually affect physical stuff like steel piano strings and guitar strings and that type of thing, as well as the quality of the voice coming to the microphone. There's a couple more items in the area of music and sound resonance that I'll get into regarding the rings on Sunday. But just be aware that the voice, when projected through a ring, it makes quite a difference in the way my voice would sound to you out there in the back room. You pick up the difference. What can I say? It works.
When the energy is neutralized, does it scatter, does it vector in different directions?
When you throw a rock in the river, it doesn't interrupt the flow of the river except where the rock is. It just goes up and over. And in this case, the energy continues on its same path, but it's diverted up and over the dwelling for a distance of several hundred feet up and several hundred feet downstream.
I'd like to ask you a similar question like that too. I've got these powerful magnets at home. I was using them one night playing when I had this harmonic harmonizer, personal harmonizer on. That won't hurt the harmonizer then. There's another medallion. Any energy will not hurt it then. It's programmed to where to keep its energy intact and resonate with it, coordinate with it then, right?
Yeah, by the nature of the materials and by the nature of the structure itself, it's what we call a fixed field in a sense, or a fixed frequency, but it contains a multiple pattern frequencies. So it would be a natural pattern of frequency and resonance, which is essentially unvarying. I mean, it does have a variance by its own nature. It fluctuates, but it's in direct accordance with the principles of the sacred geometric resonances.
So it wouldn't affect like the Tachyon energy little circles. It wouldn't affect those. I mean, I know it won't be affected now. You told me that, but would it affect like the tachionized energy or anything like that adversely?
Tachyon energy? No, they wouldn't interfere, I don't believe.
With one another, or one or the other, okay. Because one is dormant, but tachionized energy is another type, I think.
The tachyon energy is identical to what comes off the ring, with the exception that we have measured the energy beam from the ring 10 miles from the ring, like this way. So we actually have that instrumental measurement.
Can I ask about the omega ring? How long do you leave it on the line?
Those are permanent. Yeah, they go in permanently.
It looks like that's pretty recent, right?
It's really simple. It's really simple.
Does it want to be the same
And,
size?
and it's really cheap. The preferred size is that size, yeah.
Is that the same size, medium size ring?
Yeah, it's 1 cube is like 20.6 inches, 18 inches of work, but 20.6 is a preferred. And fairly heavy gauge copper, 12 gauge or
12 gauge copper. It doesn't look like the configuration is particularly precise.
No, you just wrap it on the coffee can and bend the legs back and you got it. You know, big piece of scrap wire, bucket kind of salvage yard. You know, it's really cheap.
As long as it's copper.
Yeah, and it can be bare or insulated.
Doesn't matter.
No.
What gauge did you say it was 14?
12 or 14. Yeah, the 12 gauge will probably last nearly 100 years.
Get the 14 gauge.
We'll probably live longer, so we'll have to replace it.
Just for curiosity's sake, during this particular material, when you are talking about that straight lines, that hypothetic chaos and energy, that chaotic energy cannot be transformed, has to be blocked.
At present, yeah, we can transform it, but at present, this is the simplest, most direct, and cheapest way to do that.
There's no reason to transform it.
Yeah, there is a machine, and I'm going to call it a machine-generated program that maintains this grid structure on the planet, as far as we can tell. We say they're natural, but I think it's a machine-generated geometric pattern that's being projected onto the Earth, probably from off the planet somewhere. And, you know, it's been around a long time, a really long time. I don't know how old Lucifer is, but
Yes.
he's been around a while. At least for recorded history, which is what, 10,000 years or so.
Slim, I would like to briefly talk about Marlene, this person that had breast cancer and had the cancer removed, and 16 years later she found out she had lung cancer. And another person, Seminar and I, went up to Los Angeles and did the geopathic on her condo. And the Hartman line right through the bed this way and this way. And she was dying. And so I had talked to Slim, and he gave me some things to tell her and do. We worked on her with some of the tools. And then about a week and a half later, on my way up to Oregon, we stopped, and she was really bad. I mean, terrible. I think she was detoxing or something like that. Now it's just unbelievable. Her energy has come back. She can sleep for the first time. She was not sleeping. She could only sleep in her chair downstairs, not up there. And we used that for maybe right in back of her bed. And then of course, and it's just a miracle what's happening with her. But she sounds like her old self.
Does the gauge of the copper heighten the ellipse?
Probably up to a point. 12 gauge seems to be a very convenient and fairly common item in the scrap yards, salvage yards, wherever they collect metals. You can generally go in there, root around in the bins, or ask them for some scrap materials. When they're tearing down buildings, quite often the salvage crew goes in and pulls all the old wire and just rolls it up. And you can buy that for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 a pound.
We have wires like this.
Yeah, well, you just need the
If you had a 12-story building, you wanted to interrupt the grid, would you need a larger gauge to make the energy reports?
No, this is entirely added. Yeah, we've done, I think, up to the 30th floor, done it from outside on a high-rise apartment. It's more convenient, perhaps, to just use the Omega coil in an apartment. Not real pretty to have taped on the wall, but if you can tuck them under the rug or behind furniture or something to work. And I'll guarantee you'll be so charmed with the results that ugly doesn't matter.
Conversation piece.
Right, right.
I had a question right there. You don't put it in the ground then where the energy's coming, you put it on the floor where it's coming up like this, or I seem like it's going.
Yeah, these zones are like vertical rivers. I mean, they're a plane of energy, and they have a direction of flow like a river. But it's only an inch wide. The zone is only an inch wide.
And you locate it with those L rods, and then you put the
Right.
RC rod over them to counteract them then
Yeah, you
on the
just
floor or wherever.
yeah, and you can lay it flat on the floor or up against the wall. Either way, if energy's coming this way, you just do it this way.
But it's always going straight up then.
Well, this energy, we say it comes up out of the ground. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but we know that we can block it in this fashion. I mean, we know they have a direction. They do have a flow, like a slow-moving river.
Well, it may be coming from a planet over to this way too.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Yeah. It's just part of the grid. And as you get more into the sacred geometry, you start visualizing the patterns of sacred geometry in 3 dimensions. It gets a lot more clear. Your perceptions clear up on that whole thing. But initially, if you just visualize it as a kind of a neon glow of energy, like the aurora borealis, which snakes around up there in the North Country. That's what it would look like here. Thank goodness I've been with a couple of excellent clairvoyants. One was my wife, and the other is my youngest son, who can see this. So I've learned a tremendous amount. I'm out here shooting the mouth about it, but these guys know, and they don't talk about it. So.
Slim, I know you're going to spend a whole day on this tomorrow, and some people came specifically to be able to hear what you're going to talk about with the World Pollution Project tonight. Can you give us a brief recap on what's going on with that?
Yeah. To get on into the concept of some active energy work, I'll illustrate the ring because that's the prime discovery. We have a ring with a bead on it, which is just an amplifier. And if we turn this on edge, flip it this way and illustrate it this way, then we have an energy field across the plane of the ring, and light's getting about right here. You can turn the lights out, and we'll actually be able to see that plane of the ring. But it also extends to the clairvoyance vision in both directions from this center plane. And it extends in a cylindrical beam. I'd say we measured that 10 miles long, and it probably extends way beyond that. I'd like to do a shot from Pikes Peak up to Golden and see if we can measure it. Just haven't had the time to get that done the last 5 years. brief, then you can convert a cylinder into a sphere by intersecting three rings this fashion, and then create a toroid field. And toroid simply means that the energy comes from the top, circles around this way, and comes back in the bottom. Okay, it's like an apple. It's got a central core, and the energy field is in motion. It's actually a rotating field. Those of you familiar with flower of life, it would be the tube torus type of field. Positive at the top and drawing in negative energy at the bottom, converting it back to positive. So that's the magic of the harmonizer. And after this matter of fact, the same day that we discovered the energy beam had a minimum length of 10 miles to be measured, Bob took his scanner and recorded the frequencies of molecular water in a cloud, where I was a ring on the cloud above his lab. Made a recording of that, and when he played it back on audio, he noticed that the room got real fresh and clean. It smelled like ozone in the room, he said. And all the frequency work and experimental work he'd done, he'd never experienced anything like it. I said, hey, let's make that into a sonic air cleaner. We've got a product. We make tapes and have an air freshener. Well, it sounded horrendous. It sounded like a fly stuck in a spider web. But it works. You know. So then I took a copy of the tape and played it through a little boombox cassette player to the harmonizer, which I sat about 18 inches in front of the speakers. And Bob noticed that the air in his area, when I was doing it at my house, 10 miles from where he could feel the energy field expand past him. And the same effect occurred in his lab, occurred in my house, and also in the entire local environment. All of a sudden, you smell ozone. It smells like a mountain meadow in the spring. Just beautiful. And Golden, of course, has a brewery in it, so it was a bit strong. And it was a very pleasant change. So the next thing was to see, well, how big an area can we affect? And so we took 10 of these harmonizers and made 10 tapes and distributed those along the Front Range corridor, up from the mountains a little ways. Interstate 25, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, 140 miles, 60 miles, something like that. And we played the 10 tapes simultaneously for 1 hour on a given signal. And later in the evening, and then for the next 4 days, there was absolutely not a speck of air pollution visible. The air was perfectly clear. The weatherman at noon on Saturday was so excited, he said, "It's so clear you can see Utah." I mean, he was really excited. And that was a result of this energy work. Well, we created a huge dome of clean air. Denver used to be the top, it was number 10 on top of the list. And even though I think it was off the list for a short time, or down on the list a little bit out of first place, it's completely off the list of polluted cities now. We have had a continuing program of working with this, trying to figure out better ways to do it. And
hopefully make a buck at it, from the local EPA or local government. If we are not successful in that, we will continue with the program, but it's going to take the diligence and application of everybody out here to work with it and knock out pollution in your area. So we have two concepts. We do a centralized control system where we can put specific frequencies in to take out specific pollutants and have essentially a radio controlled signal system and an automatic sampling system using the infrared analyzer, and be able to sample from a high place, the entire LA basin, for instance. We could do that quite easily, and then put precisely the signal in required to reduce the pollution to zero or a very tolerable level.
Do you have any documentation that specific pollutants are being reduced?
In Phoenix currently and in Denver, the carbon monoxide readings are 6 to 10 parts per million, down from 150 to 200, in the hazardous range.
And so you've got something going in Phoenix
Ozone
too?
is now down in Phoenix to the good range, 25, 35 parts. Mexico City, incidentally, is down. We've been working there for about 3 weeks now. And we're seeing a significant reduction. Actually, it's been a month. We got through the 15th of last month. Yeah. It wasn't as bad as what we experienced in Cairo in January. Cairo was,
Really?
I mean, it made your eyes water. I mean, it was searing. I like to say to take the hair off a buffalo. Well, here's an ancient city. It's a minimum of 10,000 years old, with a huge population, which probably hasn't changed that much in 5 or 10,000 years. The only difference is the amount of traffic. Now we have diesel and gasoline and chemical and oil refineries and all that stuff, but the stink of that ancient city was just phenomenal. And after we got our equipment set up, 48 hours later, there was a fresh breeze blowing, and what we could see was no pollution over the city.
Where did the pollutants go? Fall down? Disappear?
Well, that's why we're seeking some funding or to get paid for doing the work under contract to get this infrared analyzer, because that will let us know exactly what happens. We have a before and after, and we go in by the molecular weights of what's present afterwards and figure out what happened to it. What I suspect happens, and this is purely speculation, is that the carbon monoxide transmutes. There's an actual transmutation to nitrogen, which is a normal component of the air. And we know that through the work of Louis Crabran out of France, that biological transmutations occur, and that they occur in nature in geologic formations. But let's imagine, I'll try to illustrate this. Let's say this is a nitrogen molecule, and it transmutes, I'm going to use a little different symbolism, to oxygen and carbon. Let's say that these volumes or weights equal this volume of weight. Okay, whatever the MW molecular weight of nitrogen is equal to the molecular weight combined of carbon and oxygen. So what happened, it'd be like if this was a balloon full of water, and you kind of pinched off a corner of it, and gave it a twist, you'd have two, not two balloons, still one balloon, but there's a twist to them with a slightly different configuration. So if we do this in terms of resonance, let's say we start shaking this balloon real hard, and we give it a real twist like that, and it converts to something that looks like this. It's the same thing, but it's called carbon monoxide. So it's through resonance that we can change this, we can untwist this and not shake it and return it to this form. Okay, that's real esoteric physics, but I think that's what's happening.
And with that machine, you'd be able to know exactly?
Yeah, the infrared signature on nitrogen, let's say that this is the infrared signature of nitrogen, and it looks like this, and maybe this is the infrared signature of carbon monoxide. We can read that precisely. The same thing would happen with sulfur dioxide, probably some of the hydrocarbons. Nitrous oxide definitely is going to shift into something else. We don't know what it is. We really need to know what exactly is happening. So we're seeking funding initially for a $20,000 infrared analyzer, and then eventually, if somebody really gets interested in the work, the state-of-the-art unit is going to cost us roughly $500,000 to purchase and set up with its whole array of computers and whatnot, and then an additional amount for computer backup equipment and broadcasting equipment to send that signal out to the harmonizer units out in the field.
So you're talking about like $1 million?
$1 million would be a good start, and something more like in the nature of 3 to 5. And then as we get into servicing city regions, the company would generate an income coming back. Service program, setting up the equipment would cost, say the LA city region would cost them somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million. The healthcare savings alone would probably amount to $500 or $600 million a year.
You said crime.
Yes, crime. What we found is that the crime rate has gone down. In Denver, it's currently down 50% from what it was 3 years ago when we started working.
That alone. Besides that,
Yeah, besides health.
Is that from doing the running harmonizers?
Yeah.
Are they still running?
Air pollution work,
How,
yes.
yeah, that's the question I wanted to ask was how long do you run them, or what intervals do you run them?
I would suggest an hour or 2 in the morning and evening, just sunrise,
Just those
sunset.
small ones?
Sunrise, sunset. That'll cover roughly a 15-mile radius.
You say you don't know exactly what it's being converted into, but what are some of the effects that you've noticed in the environment?
Well, it just gets clearer. There's not as much brown particulate stuff out there. And even the haze that results after you do this work, even the haze, it seems like you can see through it more. There isn't that staticky buzz to it.
Does it only affect the atmosphere, or does it affect the soil and water?
I suspect, knowing what we know about gravity, Well, let me put a proposition to you. If you drop something here at surface level, it's the floor. Let's say you're 5 miles down in the depths of Durban deep gold mines in South Africa. If you drop something, does it hit the floor?
You don't know.
Ask the miner that dropped his peg.
Right.
Okay. It hits the floor. Gravity is working through 5 miles of rock. Okay. These devices produce what can be termed a tensor or gravity field effect. Consequently, if we're creating a sphere of a 15-mile radius from the surface, this is 15 miles and this is 15 miles. This is rock, and you've got various layers here of sedimentary rocks and aquifers and et cetera, et cetera. I have no proof of this at the moment. I can only hope and speculate that this will help clean up the aquifers and the soils. The first evidence we have of that is the increase in the soil organisms in the cornfield in Iowa. The numbers of worms and beneficial insects in those fields is up dramatically. Consequently, there's been a reduction in the amount of toxic residues from pesticides used in the past and from the fertilizers, particularly the phosphates and nitrates that are used. In Iowa, starting 2 years ago, we put one of the larger agricultural harmonizers on a farm there. And thank you. We've been using the swept clear tape there. And the farmer turns it on in the morning and in the evening for about an hour, maybe 2. And the first year they had an infestation of the corn borer miller. It'd be like a cutworm miller. Little critter here, you know, he's got his life to live and all that sort of thing. But it makes it awful hard on corn because the corn stalk, they bore into the axle of the leaf right in here and weaken it. And then the ear falls down or falls off before the corn is ripe. Well, his corn borer gauge is his window screen. Wall of the house here, and he's got his eaves out, lamp on the eaves. The millers were just all over the screens. You couldn't see out the screen for the millers. And when he started using this, within 24 hours, instead of being the 500 or 600 millers on the side of the house or on the screen, you see 5 or 6. They're gone. They left the area. Went somewhere else to do the dirty work. Or succumbed. I don't know which. I have no idea.
Now, I remember reading an article, and I remember it saying at the end of the period of time, the corn stalk, his had only like 1 or 2, and the other 3 counties, or 4 counties actually, had 8 to 10.
Right.
I was interested because I'm from Iowa, and I read it to all my relatives who are still farming back there. And they wanted to know, did he plant the whole growing period?
The whole season, yeah.
Whole season, and then upon harvesting time, is that when they found that they had such a better quality of corn and didn't lose, and they didn't have to spray, and
No,
they
no, he
gained
didn't
some.
spray. Well, he checked it during the season, and he couldn't see any evidence of borers.
Mm-hmm.
So he elected not to do some of the practices that his neighbors were doing, who hadn't any reference point. They were getting damaged, so they sprayed, or they were being encouraged to by the local ag service. Now, last year, the other thing that happened, that fall, the side of his house was covered with ladybugs. He had not seen a ladybug in that area in 30 years. And all of a sudden, the whole side of the house is just bright yellow with bright orange with ladybugs. Neighbors would drive by and say, "When did you paint the house?" Ladybugs. Well, I happen to know that that particular insect winters in the high mountains where a certain type of energy is present in the rocks. Here in California, famous for the ladybug rocks. They go up and scoop them up in bags and haul them down and keep them over winter. And that's the orgone, so-called orgone energy of right. And that's apparent and it's visible. And you don't have to have a trained eye. You just go up on those peaks in the fall, in the evening, after dark, and you can see the pulsating blue band of energy above the rocks where these insects hang out. So apparently that same energy was really permeating the house, and those insects gathered there and just really liked it, crowded in the area. Well, last year, they had a perfect corn growing season. Same program, morning and evening, an hour or two. And a good year is 140 bushel corn. A really, really good year is 160 bushel maybe. Last year, they had 190 bushel. First time in history. No fertilizer, no sprays, no change in the program except that one item. So it increases that light energy in the area. Okay, that means that the toxic elements are absent or being transmuted in the soils. You have a higher population of beneficial organisms. And I think I'm going to get some well tests from the local area this year. I'll get those back from Monty, and we'll see if the groundwaters at 100 feet have been improved. And if that's the case, then we definitely can make a major difference.
Yes, I spent some time in Finhorn, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of what Finhorn is in Scotland. And they were having financial difficulties that they needed to bring in for a particular project. And everyone who was there decided to picture a block like a cloud, just have it removed and picture golden light of gold actually raying right through. And I was just wondering if we might sleep on it and perhaps all of us do at least one meditation together on bringing this money that's from me. And then what we did after that was at 9 o'clock at night for 3 months, we just simply noticed it was 9 o'clock at night and just for 1 minute pictured that same vision again, and they got the heart when we asked. And on top of it, it wasn't all coming in gold. There were days where people came and they donated time and also equipment that they didn't even know they needed at the time. So I would put that out as a suggestion.
Thank you. At my first meeting there at Drumbo was with the group, There were a couple of ladies from Pinhorn present, and I owe them a great favor because they sent me a copy of Peter Caddy's book. So thank you for reminding me. And, I need to return that favor. Some of the neat effects I covered it. I think we're about finished up for the evening program here, and I just wanted to bring up some of these wonderful effects that some of the associates have noticed, and some of the effects that we've discovered ourselves. Again, this is a research association. Nobody has a bona fide paid up membership. We have a lot of contributors who help support the work by the purchase of tools, and that's kept us going for 5 years now, since the original discovery of the rings. And we've trained probably, at this point, I think we've trained around 800 people to do the geopathic work and to at least get acquainted with the tools and begin to use them. So the network is fairly large. It's international now. We have contacts in England, Germany, France, Spain, and we're getting good reports back from overseas. Now a few in Mexico, and made a contact in Canada, in Toronto, just 3 weeks ago, that may take not only the tools in there, but also the air pollution work. And I got as soon as I got done with the conference, there was an article in the paper about how nasty the pollution is in Toronto. So I'm sure that gentleman will be very pleased to experiment. He has a little environmental remediation company. His son is connected with the major environmental company in Brussels. So I know that we're being noticed and talked about. And I want to remind you all, no matter what you've heard before you came here from anybody, that a little bit of everything you hear is true.
Good ending.
Again, I want to thank Christanne and Dorothy for the organization and the putting together. And I don't need to neglect Jim, because I know he's had a big hand. Don't believe everything you hear. So thank you again for coming, and hope to see many of you tomorrow. Morning, we're going to cover what I consider the most fundamental aspect of subtle energy, and that's the Earth grid, or the geopathic stress zones. And I use the term geopathic stress generically. There's many, many, many different geopathic stress zones. We can identify them as Hartmann grid, Curry grid, what I call the actual geopathic zone, personal zones, communication zones, anything that you can think of can have a subtle energy that will act in a geopathic fashion, or will create a pathology or interruption or chaos in some aspect of your life. So the geopathic stress is something that's very easily remedied. You locate it by dowsing with cordless L rods or willow switch or pendulum, or just by feeling it with your hands. And there's many ways to detect it. I choose the dowsing rods, the simple L rods, which can be of any material. It can be wood, plastic, glass, stem of grass, branch, anything will work. So there's no magic to these. It's just that it's very cheap, very convenient, and it gives a good visual demonstration of the presence of geopathic stress. And to demonstrate that, I'll just walk along the side here, and I'll locate a geopathic stress line, which is coming in from my right. And the energy field, as I come into it, approach the zone, the rods will begin to open. And then as I get exactly on that 1 inch center line, they'll lock, fully open right angles to their original alignment. And they will literally lock onto that position. I'm going to look for one I call a geopathic stress zone. Just hold a geopathic zone in mind. Then as that zone is approached, the center line grabs the rod, so and it's in perfect alignment. As I step back slightly, the tips want to move forward again. And as I move forward, they want to move backwards, literally lock up in center line. So it's very.
How did you ascertain that they're coming from your right?
I just simply set that program in my mind. Yeah, I only want to have to deal with those which are coming into the house. So as we go around the house, we only pick up those that are coming into it, not those that are exiting. The same line over here would be exiting the house, and it wouldn't read on the rods. That's just the way you program your own mind. Okay, so that's your mind is out here in your biofield somewhere at some distance. It's a network of great complexity and great geometry. Mind is not in the brain. The brain is a piece of meat that acts like a switchboard essentially, or a recognition panel for these various energies, whether it's light, sound, or the subtle energies. So this line then can be blocked very simply. And what I'll do here is to locate exactly the spot on the wall, the corner of that brick. Use the rods just by placing them here. This bag. And that zone is no longer present.
Could you show that with another pair of rods by walking?
Yeah.
Slim, do you need to leave those rods there?
Yes, they're permanent.
So if you remove the rods, that line's gonna come back?
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, they become a permanent acupuncture needle.
I see.
And I'll show you how that works when we go outside.
And does the line just going down below or up above to mark
Yeah,
down?
it just beams vertical over and down. Just like you throw a rock in the river. It's very, very simple. Clairvoyance, you can see those energies. That's what they see. They see the energies going like this. Now, why it works that way, I don't know. All I know is that it does work. So, I'll leave that to the bean counters and theoretical quantum physicists to
Right.
figure it out. We're only interested in the practical aspects of it, how to help ourselves, help our families and our friends. And for some of you, I'm sure that it can become at least a part-time business to add a little income to your cash flow and be of service. We started this, oh gosh, in '85. Bill Reid and I were partnered up in a little fix-it handyman business. And I mentioned the story yesterday about the gal who had the chronic migraine, and she was cured of that malady. And as we look back on that over the past 12, 13 years, we still marvel at the simplicity of what we did and how well it worked for her. Then we went on and began doing the same service for others that we'd run into in our business. And we found that all sorts of physical maladies could be alleviated, if not completely removed. I think our next case was an area where there were a lot of men were having heart attacks. As a matter of fact, one gentleman actually died during the time we were working in that area. And we didn't have the opportunity to do his home. Although I knew him, and he showed no signs of heart problems. I mean, he just was a healthy, happy guy. And boom, all of a sudden he went down with a heart attack. But we did do several other homes in the neighborhood. And the gentleman in question all reported relief from this contraction they were having and the heart problem that they'd suffered for years. So, and I personally experienced a very local phenomenon when I slept in the bed where a person had died of a heart attack. And when I woke up in the morning, my heart was in spasm. I was had a lot of pain, a lot of difficulty. And so the next night I just changed ends in bed. I slept the other way. And I didn't have the same symptoms. Symptoms relieved later in the day. By a couple hours later, I would have a problem. But by dousing the spot, I found right there under where my heart was positioned that there was a crossing. So it's very real to me. And those of you who may have other difficulties or symptoms, or even a generalized kind of malaise, you just don't feel good, this kind of stuff. By taking the geopathic stress out, your overall health and well-being will improve. And we have a lot of recent cases right here in California where that's proved to be true. Dorothy's neighbor was down with, some cancer, just didn't feel good, or combination of things. She's been bedridden, as a matter of fact. And after they did the geopathic films, she's been up and awake and bright and healthy, and really made a dramatic recovery in a few weeks. So this is the kind of thing that can happen. It won't happen in every case, but probably 95, maybe 95%, maybe 98%, you'll get relief.
What about, I'm thinking of my mother right now. It's like she's had the same problem wherever she's lived. She lived in Texas and then now she's in Mississippi. But she's having the same. Can you comment on that? Or?
Well, the condition may have, as we say, locked in sidestep quickly, to shift that pattern in your biofield or have some energy work done. Now, these things do actually result in physical change. And when you're dealing with chaos or high resistance or high densities of positive ions, which are present in these fields, that can actually manifest as a condition in the body being light upon which the physical frame hangs. So that's how I view it. Most of us are at least familiar with that concept. We actually have instrumental confirmation back in 90, I believe. We ran into a physicist gentleman who'd been hit by an automobile. And he'd been brought back into physical function by the Rolfing Institute there in Boulder. And being a physicist and a scientist, he wanted to know what was happening in Rolfing and how it worked. So he devised a video camera that fed into a computer system that he built that would allow him to analyze the light coming off the body or present in the body. And where pain existed, say if a person had pain in the shoulder, viewed through the camera, you could see a slightly shadowed area in the area of pain. And as soon as the manipulation was complete, or the treatment was complete, there'd be a lessening of that shadowy area. And then you can zoom in, enlarge the area, and do further analysis on the light quality. Yeah, brilliant guy. Unfortunately, he's lost to us now. We don't have access. But when we showed him the tools, and we put just the energy beam from the ring on that shoulder, and the pain completely went away. And he could analyze the light output from that shadowed area, or what had been a shadowed area. He was totally blown away. When we took 2 gallon jugs of water, we just brought them off Safeway shelves, and set one in the ring and the other one over here. And we could analyze the change in the amount of light coming off the water. Okay, this is a quantum effect. This means the water is emitting photons. It's a very deep concept in quantum physics. But for water to fluoresce, ordinarily it takes an enormous amount of energy. You have to input thousands of volts of electricity, or you have to use very, very high intensity sound to achieve fluorescence in water. It occurs instantaneously and with no obvious power input with the rings. So these are some of the stories around subtle energies and what happens. And incidentally, we did go back, we did find this gentleman again who had a bad shoulder. And 2 or 3 months later, he still had a bad shoulder. So we moved to geopathic zones. And after about a week, the pain in the shoulder went away and never came back. He was sleeping right in across it. So that's how all these subtle things work. All right, today we're presenting the concept of geobiology, which means life on Earth. Okay, biology of the Earth. And the plants, the animals, us, birds, creepy crawlies, everything can be considered biological organisms. And we move in and around and amongst and through these various energy fields that we're not ordinarily aware of, unless we have to be clairvoyant. Break here, go back to Laura's question.
Oh, I wanted to know, do you go from left to right or to right to left, or what sense are you looking for
Over here on
yeah,
the
south, west, just walking?
geopathic zones can run at any angle. I mean, they can come from anywhere, go to anywhere. So you can have this network that will be very skewed. But you'll have one going this way and another one coming back this way.
Oh.
So that's how they work.
So if you looked at it globally and saw the web of the geopathic zones, they wouldn't all be coming this way and this way.
No.
They start at many different points and go any direction.
Well, they, for the most part, I'll get into that here in a little bit, what our concept is. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But at least our concept is something we can work with. It's a verbal, visual model. And these, again, are vertical walls or planes of energy that intersect. I have a couple of pictures in here that may help to more accurately define that for the way you can perceive it.
So the geopathic zone could just start flowing
We
and then
did
stop.
find, in Mexico City, we did find one that started at a point and went across the city. It happened to be right at the foot of a volcano. In the Zalpan area of Mexico City.
So we can start anywhere, but does it have to be a specific place, like a falls or a volcano or a spring or something where they might start?
Geopathic, as I define geopathic zones, they are associated with faults, fissures, cracks, water veins, etc. The Hartman grid is entirely something else. We don't know what the origin of that may be. It's not necessarily related to a geologic structure. So the concept of geobiology is developed in Europe, and we read the little book mentioned in the bibliography here, Points of Cosmic Energy by Blanche Merz. Brilliant woman who's been a dowser and researcher, and I highly recommend reading the book. She presents a wonderful, wonderful picture of the Hartman grid and other energy points and interactions. MRZ.
And the name?
Points of cosmic energy. Yeah, it's listed there.
Oh, it is?
In the bibliography. Yeah, unfortunately, our workbook is written about 3 years ago, and we've gone a couple of light years past all of the information presented there now. And I really want to get some better graphics and perhaps a little more coherent presentation so that as you refer back to it, the workshop is very real to you in proper sequence. So in our presentation here today, we'll have to do these one at a time to narrowness of the shelf here. I'm going to go into some of the history, the theory as best we can present it, and how we can apply this information, And then we'll do some actual field work this afternoon out here in the side yard. And we'll actually do this home as a demonstration. And as a thank you to our hosts for letting us have the place here. At the end of the program on Sunday, we'll provide a certificate. It probably doesn't mean much except that you've been here and done that. But I can tell you now that by the time today is over, at the end of today's program, you will know 1,000 times more than Bill Reid and I did when we started doing geopathic work. I mean, we were complete novices. We'd only heard the word geopathic stress, no concept what it was. I had no idea how prevalent it might be, how frequently that phenomenon might show up, or anything about it. We've worked over the past 12 years. We found that it's everywhere with very, very few exceptions. The exceptions have been 7 locations in the Denver area that we found that do not have any geopathic stress of any kind. They're just blank spots in the grid. And we didn't have time to map the whole thing. We just checked quickly for geopathic stress. No problem. Okay, goodbye. Job done. So the certification will mean that you can actually find the zones and work with those energies. You know how to bend the rods, put them in the ground, locate the zones, and block the energies, and then recheck. And then it'll be up to you over the next several months to do some practice. Maybe a couple of weeks would be sufficient if you have that time. Go find somebody who's got a problem, find the problem, fix it. Do the geopathic zones and then check back with them every few days to see how they're doing. And see if a major change does indeed occur. I'll almost guarantee that in 98% of the cases, you'll be successful. Now, there's 1 or 2 or 10% that don't improve. Something else is very, very wrong. And I don't necessarily know what that is. You come down and find that parasites are probably always associated with geopathic stress after a period of time. A parasitic condition will come up. And help them get rid of the parasites by whatever means. And then everything really works well. But those will be fairly few in number where parasites were a major consideration. Well, the Europeans have adopted the term geobiology, and that kind of replaces the old term geomancy. I've looked in the dictionaries, I've looked for it under topic headings. I can't find a definition of geomancy. Nothing that satisfies me. Webster said it was the art of discovering lines. Okay. Draw a line on the wall, I don't know. But it was so incomplete that it didn't make any sense to me. It probably will be defined today, but not directly. As we go through this process, you could say, well, I'm learning to do geomancy.